Deitha Ewinakan. Welcome to podcast number 84. So last week's podcast finished on the Thursday, talking about what had happened that week. And obviously the Friday, the next day, was the day that had been building up, well, since the beginning of the year, the marathon weekend. And I had a funeral at Glyn Valley, 10:30 Friday morning. And then Days took theirs back. I had my car there. I went and got changed in the toilets of Glyn Valley, put my sat-nav on for my car parking address in London, and I headed off. I didn't have a bad trip up at all, really, driving up until I got on the outskirts of London. And then, of course, I hit London at the wrong time, rush hour, and it was like 5 hours getting up to the outskirts. And I'm sure it must have been, 2 hours to do the last 10 miles. It was stop, start, stop, start. It makes me grateful living home here. My commute every day to work is 1 minute. And you was just sat there for 10 minutes. You was hardly moving. But I did go through Peckham, which always makes me laugh, because David and Victoria Beckham, when they had Brooklyn, they called him Brooklyn because that's where he was conceived. And they always said at the time, 'tis a good job that he wasn't conceived in Peckham, or he'd be Peckham Beckham. But anyway, I got up to Greenwich. What I do, last year I did it as well. I booked a car parking space as close to my hotel as I could get. And it was only about 3/4 of a mile away. So I parked up and then I walked to my hotel. Really, I suppose 'tis a dear way of doing it because, like last year, I booked my hotel close to the start of the race. 'Tis only about a mile's walk away. And of course, they charge a bit more for that. But I just wanted, like last year, to be nice and relaxed. I didn't want to be halfway across London and having to travel there on the morning of the race. Perhaps took a wrong train or knowing me or whatever. All pressure. I didn't want that. So anyway, I got to my hotel and went into my room, and then I did manage to go in and have some tea. They were still serving food when I went down there. And then I was all geared up for the Saturday morning. So like I might have said last year, you need to register before you run the marathon. And it's at the XL building. They're at other side, well, not other side of London, but about 5 miles away from my hotel. And they got a running show there Thursday, Friday and Saturday. And I thought I would go up like I did last year on the Friday. So I'm in London and I just go across and do it. Because I can remember a few years ago, I went up with the fleet team and we went on the bus. We left Bodmin in the morning, 7 o'clock. And I can't remember, it's either 5 or 5:30 on the Saturday is the deadline. And we got there with half hour to spare. And back then we were stuck in traffic and you're looking at your watch and you're getting agitated and you're thinking, well, what happens? We're going to miss out all this training if we don't get there on time. So I didn't want to do that. So anyway, I was fine. And last year, you might remember, I did walk to the XL building, which was about 5 miles, and I walked back and I ended up with blisters on my heels. So I thought I ain't going to make that mistake again. So anyway, I got on the train there at Greenwich. I nearly missed my stop at Canary Wharf, but did get off. And I got to the running show. And 'tis heaving, absolutely heaving. As you can imagine, there's 50,000 people running on the Sunday, and the majority of them turn up on the Saturday to register. So 'tis very well organised. They got lots of little queues there that you go into to get all your little kit bag and that. And you're only queuing 5 minutes, if that. So 'tis very well organised. And what you have to do, they will email you a few weeks before a barcode that you take on the day, and you've also got to take photo ID just to prove that 'tis you. And then when you've done that, they give you a little see-through bag, and in that bag is your number that you pin on the front of your top. And on the back of that number, there's a little microchip, which when you cross the start line, it'll start timing. And then along the course, every so often, there'll be other, it's like speed bumps, really, where you run over them and you hear a beep because they're just checking, you still going, checking your times, whatever. So you get that in your bag. And then up until this year, when you did the marathon and you finished at the end, you'd queue up and they'd give you your medal and your T-shirt. But they did it different this year. They give you your finisher T-shirt before you started. So you then go to another part of the building and they give you the T-shirt. I suppose it saves more taking stuff to the finish on the Sunday. So I had a nice look around the building there, and then I thought, right, I'm going to head into London now and see a few of the sights. So I went there, Tower Bridge and whatever, and I was walking around for about an hour, and I thought, you're an idiot, really, because you don't want to wear yourself out like you did last year. You don't want to get blisters or anything. So after about an hour, I got my phone out again to work out where I was going, back on the trains, and then back to my hotel. And then after that, I went into Greenwich itself to have some tea. And I was lucky because I didn't book a table. And you can imagine that every hotel in that area is fully booked that night. And the first two restaurants I went in, sorry, no room. But then I did find a third one that still had room for me. So I went and had me tea there, and 'twas handsome. Absolutely handsome. So after I had me tea, went back to the hotel, watched the football on my phone, which was good. And 'twas then, gone 10 o'clock. This is Saturday night now. So I'm gearing up, ready for the next day. I mean, the nerves have been kicking in all day, really. After you go to the Excel building, it's getting real. But what I had to do then was get rid of all the stuff that I didn't need for the Sunday, and get them back to my car. Because when you go to the race on the Sunday, you go with your little see-through bag, which really should have perhaps a change of shoes, a top, just bare essentials, really. So like last year, I thought I'd done it right last year. And you might have heard that I actually took up a plug adapter board to plug in, charge up all my phones and everything. And of course, I'd left that in my hotel. So I think I was the only one out of 50,000 runners with a see-through bag with a blimmin' 5-socket electric adapter in, which they did pull my leg about, to be honest. So I got everything that I didn't need, put them in my suitcase and my rucksack, did the little walk to my car. And I tell you what, 'twas a little bit eerie, really. 'Twas put it this way, the area I was staying in is a bit livelier than Wade Bridge on a Saturday night. There was a few pubs I went by, there was a nightclub, and blokes hang around on the street corners, and there's me with me blimmin' rucksack and me suitcase. It made me feel a little bit wary, but everything was fine. It was okay. So got me stuff in my car, back to the hotel. Didn't have too bad a night. I think I woke up about 4:30, something like that. And then get ready, went down, had me breakfast. And then I started the walk to the start. And 'twas dry and sunny, which was lovely, but the wind was freezing, absolutely freezing. So I had me sweatshirt top on, whatever. And you had to get to the start an hour and 15 minutes before you started to run. So you're hanging around a long time. So what you do then, you go and look for your lorry where you put this bag. Mine, I think, was lorry number 12. Took off my sweatshirt, put it in the bag, give them the bag. Now, what they do recommend is that if you bring some clothing that you don't want perhaps anymore, I took a T-shirt, so you put on just to help you keep warm a bit, really. And then I thought, right, I might as well go for a wee, because it was getting near the time, and the queues for the toilets, that's the only downside, I would say. You queuing for like a half hour or more, go toilet. And it was taking ages. and then you slowly move forward. Then you hear the speaker, right, wave 3, wave 4. Well, I was wave number 7. So I'm getting closer to the toilet. There's only about 20 people in front of me. And I heard Mehdi say, right, everybody for wave 7, we're now ready to go into your starting area. I thought, hang. So I had to go. So anyway, trotted over and the race was ready to start. I must admit, I had a bad feeling about the race. I think because of me injuries, me pain in the arch of my foot. I mean, it was better than it had been, but I don't know, it plays on your mind. And it's like with this marathon training, half of it's the mental side, the other half is the physical side. And I did have a bit of a bad feeling, but I thought it should be all right. So I started off. Well, then at mile 3, the pain came back in the arch of my foot. And I thought, oh no. So you just hope that it doesn't get any worse. Because the longest training run I'd done was now 2 weeks ago, which was 20 miles. And the pain was there, but it was okay. But now you're doing that extra 26 miles. I mean, mentally as well, that mucks your brain up. You think, well, I've only run 20 miles, I could do 26. But anyway, this pain started, so I was a little bit, on edge. Well, then I ain't gone much further, and this woman run past me, and she said, here, you've dropped some of your gels. Now, just to explain what that is, you have a running belt, and I have like 6 gels. They're little sachets, and you rip the top off, and they got this gel inside which helps with your energy. So I had 6 that I would take every 4 miles. So I knew then that would get me hopefully to the end. Well, what happened was 3 of them had slipped out of the little loops in my belt. Now, the first time I wore the belt, I wore it when I did the Bath Half last year, but it was the first time I wore it on a marathon. And I don't know why. So, of course, she said, here, you've lost your gels. I thought, I got to have them. So I turned round. So I'm running back. There's 30,000, 40,000 people running towards me. And I'm running there trying to pick up me 3 gels off the road, which I got. But I thought, well, I can't trust them anymore in the loops. So for the next 16 miles, I think I was carrying at least 3 in my hands. But thankfully, dear of her, thankfully, she pointed that out to me. So then, about mile 5, a pain started then in the top of my thigh, on the inside of my thigh, which was worrying because I'd never had that before. So with every stride I took with my right leg, that pain was there. And again, I still had the pain in my foot. And from then on, I just didn't relax. Because I'm thinking, please don't get any worse. Because I've done this. I ain't going to not finish. I'm going to keep going and I'm going to keep running. You just pray that it don't get any worse. And thankfully it didn't, which was brilliant. And then the longer you run, then you get little aches and pains in other parts of your legs. And then the longer you run again, your legs, them getting heavy, them starting to ache. So any pains you've got, them kind of masked by these new pains and aching. As you can imagine, you see some fantastic sights running around London. But I must admit, I wasn't in the mood for looking around that much, really. But the Cutty Sark, that's always iconic at it. It's running round that one. And then also, when you get to London Bridge, Tower Bridge, it's fantastic going over there. The noise as you're going over, the cheering, that really is a boost. And also you realise you're nearly halfway in miles. Not in the actual hardness of the race, but in the miles, you're nearly halfway. So it is lovely going over there. But everything was going okay. I was chugging along. And then I got to mile 20. I knew I wasn't as fit as I was last year because of the injuries. I knew I'd been running a minute a mile slower. And last year I got to mile 21 and I was still feeling fantastic. And I thought, I'm going to be sprinting up the mile at this point. But and I didn't, by the way. I didn't, because that last 6 miles is a killer. But this year I wasn't feeling 100% from the start. But I looked at my watch and I realised that I'd started the first few miles running faster than I have done for the last 3 months. So then that starts playing on your mind. Did I go off too fast? So mentally, it mucks your brain up, really does. But like I say, I kept going on. And then as I'm getting the 6 miles, as Bob Parkhouse always said, that's when the second half begins. It does for me anyway. And I just kept going, and I was talking to myself saying, one more step, just to keep going. You don't relax because you've still got a bit to go. But then when that last mile comes, you know you're nearly there. And then that last half mile, perhaps even it might only be quarter mile, is the bit you do the marathon for, or it is for me. Just running up there, the emotions. Again, you want to laugh, you want to cry. The crowd's cheering. You see the finish line in front of me. And, it was fantastic. And they did take a booty photo of me, actually. I did, as you might have seen, I put loads of photos on my Facebook page of me running. And they got a class one where I'm just so happy I'm crossing the line. And when you get the other side, you stop. And then the first thing you hear is one of the stewards say, don't stop, keep going. Because obviously they got to clear the finishing line. You can't just stop there. So you walk a bit further and then they give you your medal, which is a class medal, booty medal he is. And then you just keep walking and then you find your lorry and then you get your bag back. So that was me marathon. It was hard going. The training, everything I found it hard going this year with the injuries and everything. I mean, that does beggar you up, really. And also trying to fit it all in, because like you got to do 4 runs a week, 3 during the week, 1 at the weekend, and trying to fit that in with everything else and doing my podcast, which is quite time consuming. I did find it quite stressful. So I know I've always said once I've done a marathon, I ain't doing no more. And I always do another one the next year. But I do think that this will be the last one. Because like I started running 7 years ago. So I've done 6 London marathons in 7 years. So I think now's the time I'll perhaps stop doing them. But it's been very enjoyable. Hard work, but enjoyable. So before I leave the area there at the finish line, I look for a friendly face and I go over and I say to him, here, can you do us a favour? Can you just take a photo? So I give them my phone. So they take a photo of me. So I've got that to look back on in years to come. And then you've got to start walking then to find your train to get back to Greenwich. And this year was easier than last year, because last year, I don't know if there was strikes or something, but I had a bit on the train. Then I had to go on the buses. Well, this year it was all by train. So it should have been easier. So I get on my train and I know where I'm going and I wasn't concentrating really. And I missed my stop. I should have got off at Lewisham, I think. And the train was crowded and the tannoy wasn't that loud. So I didn't hear her say it. Anyway, we went to the next stop, didn't think nothing of it until we was going. I thought, hang on a minute, that doesn't look recognisable. Got to the next stop, and by then I'd realised I should have got off 2 stops before. So off the train I get, up over the bridge, down the other side, wait for 15 minutes, I think it was, for the train to go back again. So I wasted a bit of time there, but I got back then off on my right stop. Then I had to change, I think it's the DLR line, and that train then took me right back to Greenwich. So I think I got back about 5:30, back into Greenwich, then walked to my car, get in, stopped at a service station, had a bit of tea, topped up with petrol, and then headed home again. So I got home, it was just after 11:30 when I got home. But I couldn't sleep. As you can imagine, I'm absolutely buzzing. So I'm still awake 1:30 in the morning. But it was brilliant. And then obviously back into work Monday morning. So like I said, I think that is the end of me marathon adventures, but it's been quite a journey. And you might have remembered I got a ballot place this year, so I didn't have to raise money for charities at all. But I thought that seeing that the race coincided with Father's birthday, I would do it for the Alzheimer Society. And I didn't push it too much, but the response from you all has been absolutely brilliant. I think the page is still open at the minute, but I just looked just now, and including the gift aid as well, we've raised over £3,300. So thank you to everybody. And I know there's someone else that gave a charity check, which should be added to it as well. So absolutely brilliant. Thank you so much to everyone. Hopefully a little bit more will come in to go towards the charity, just to help with research and care and everything. But brilliant. Perhaps, I think I've mentioned it before, some of you might not know their connection with the Alzheimer's Society. And of course that was dear old father. He developed it, well, he was diagnosed when he was 76. He was still working till then, coming in 5 days a week. And we noticed there was little things happening, like we'd be there at work, the phone would go, and one of the first things that went was his spelling. So he would take a message on the phone, but it would be abbreviated. And then he'd put the phone down. Of course, he couldn't remember what it was, sort of thing. So unknown to father, the phone would be going in his office, and we'd be flying to our phones to answer it before he did, so that he didn't get agitated. He didn't realise what was happening. But things was getting worse, and it was getting to the point really where I was going to have that horrible conversation one day where I'd say, look, Father, perhaps you better not come in tomorrow. And I was absolutely dreading that. But then what happened was, one day he was having breakfast, and I don't know what happened. He fell or something, scat his head, ended up down Trelisk all day. He was trussed up like a chicken, and he come home that night. Well, the next morning he got up to come to work, and Mother said, where are you going? So he said, I'm going to work. She said, Ron, can't you remember you was in hospital all day yesterday? And the doctor said you needed to rest. Well, he couldn't remember that. So he stayed home, and he didn't look to come into work again since. So at least we didn't have to have that horrible conversation. But I did have him back a bit, because everybody loves seeing Father. And I used to have him as a bearer for a while, which went okay. I mean, people could tell his memory wasn't quite what it was. But that was it was getting more stressful for me too. Because I remember once we had a funeral down St Eneder Church. And as you know, we carry a lot of times on the poles, the Cornish way. And we'd get into the end of the service, last hymn, so we were looking for the poles. Well, of course, Father had one, and he couldn't remember where he put it. So luckily the church was only half full, but there's me, Father, and 3 other bearers looking around the back of the church, looking for this pole, which we did find. And I thought, oh, hang. I thought, this is added stress. So that was that. But he never seemed to realise. I mean, that in a way it was nice that he didn't seem to realise he was losing his memory. One sad thing was that both his short term and long term went very soon. You get a lot of people that, even if their short term memory goes, they can still talk about the old times. But with Father, that side went too. But anyway, we did get him diagnosed fairly early on, and they did put him on medication. And this is what I say to everybody. If somebody talks to me and they're worried about a relative, I said, if you can, get them diagnosed early, because if they can have this medication, it slows it down. So it at least gives them a little bit longer with their memory. It holds on to it. And this is what happened with Father, I'm sure. It slowed down the memory loss. And, we then had 12 years. How he kept going, I don't know. And for the last 6 years or whatever, perhaps, I don't know, he didn't have a clue. 'Twas sad. He knew we was a familiar face. but he didn't know who we was. But we had good times. I mean, you would have seen Daisy perhaps on YouTube singing the Blackbird song from the Wurzels with Father. And I think that had over, was it 3 million views all over the world? That was good memories. And we had laughs. I mean, it was a proper roller coaster, really. But as he got worse, in the end, we felt it was time for him to go into a home. And, of course, we've only got one in Wadebridge now, St Breock. We used to have loads. And there was a space there, so we grabbed it. Otherwise, we could have ended up having to travel 10, 20, 30 miles to see him. And at least at St Breock, I could take Mother up every day, drop her off, and then after tea, I'd go up, usually about 7:30, and sit with them there for about half hour. And there was always other locals up there you could have a yarn to, and it was like a parallel universe, really. I did enjoy it up there. And dear old Father, when he first went up there, he just walked all the time. He walked miles down the corridors, up and down, up and down. And, of course, when I say there's locals there, a lot of them knew Father as the Undertaker. And he would even walk at night time. And you can imagine if somebody's lying in their bed and they ain't feeling 100%, and they look up and they got the Undertaker looking down at it, tisn't so good. But we had good laughs. There was one thing, I mean, it was heartbreaking too. I had me jumper on one day, me R.J. Bray and Son jumper, and he pointed at it, and I thought, oh, here we go. So I pointed at R.J. Bray. I said, who's that then, Father? He said, that's me. So I pointed at the Son, and I said, who's that? He said, that's you. And honestly, it felt wonderful. So I called over one of the carers. And just to give you the background, when Father was home, he always watched Sky News. And he'd watch that all day. So anyway, I called the carer over and I said, watch this. So I pointed to me jumper again. I said, what's that then, Father? And he looked at it and he said, Sky News. Sky News. But there we are. No, there was a lot of people at the home that I'd known forever that you would chat to every night. And it was sad to see a lot of them was in the same position that Father was. And I think the last thing I'll say about it, I mean, Father never sung, he never hummed or whistled or anything. But it was about 10 days, a few years before he passed away, every day when I saw him, he'd be humming The Carnival Is Over by the Seekers. And I used to go home, I used to break my heart because I thought this is so symbolic. The carnival is over and, his life is over. And I used to find it quite upsetting, really. And then after about 10 days, he just stopped and he never did it again. And that's why we had that song played at his funeral. It was quite moving, that was. But I could go on and talk about lots of different things that happened. But I think I'll leave it there for tonight. So anyway, I went off on a tangent, but that's the reason why I did raising the money for the Alzheimer Society. And I know as the years go on, they're getting closer. They're getting closer to getting medication to, as I say, slow it down and hopefully to cure it. Who knows? But thank you once again to everybody. And I was going to do a little bit more of Mark Enwood tonight, but I've talked too long, so I won't do that. I'll go on to me Cornish word of the week and me Cornish dialect. I think for me Cornish word, seeing as I mentioned Tower Bridge, I will do the word for bridge, which is ponds. Ponds. And for me Cornish dialect, 'tis a slight variation on one that was mentioned last week when we said that some people, they use the word freckin instead of saying something perhaps a bit worse kind of thing if they're swearing. You say freckin' job, whatever. Well, a shorter version of that is freck. And I always remember people who say, "Go, you my proper old freck," which you a bit fussy or whatever kind of thing. You my proper old freck. So I think that'll be my Cornish dialect for the week. Right, well, there we go. Sorry I've bored you with just myself tonight, but I did get carried away a bit there. I could have gone on a lot longer, but there we are. we'll be back to normal next week anyway. So I hope you have a good week. Wish you well. Do Guinness. Curno Bisfican.